the crew of Apollo 13. Wishing everybody there a nice evening, and we're just about ready to close out our inspection of Aquarius and get back to a pleasant evening at Odyssey. Good night.
13, we've got one more item for you when you get a chance. We'd like you to stir up your cryo tanks. In addition, have Shaft and Trunnion
Okay.
for a look at the Comet Bennett if you need it.
Okay. Stand by. Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Yes, Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main B bus undervolt.
Roger, main B undervolt. Okay, stand by, 13. We're looking at it.
And we had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning.
We're here in the Space Gallery, and I'm going to be talking about the number 2 oxygen tank that was always on board the service module of Apollo, and it's of particular interest on Apollo 13. The oxygen tank was used to provide oxygen to the astronauts, energy by way of the fuel cells, and it made water for the astronauts. But there's a backstory to the number 2 tank. It was made by Beechcraft, and NASA indicated that it should have 28 volts of electricity running through it. And Beechcraft did that. The tank that they were making for Apollo 10 was dropped, and so sent back to Beechcraft to be restored. But in the meantime, NASA sent a memo to Beechcraft saying all the new tanks should be upgraded to 65 volts. Well, when they heard new tanks, they thought that the old tank that they were refurbishing was going to go on Apollo 10. Not so. NASA had another tank that they put on Apollo 10. They took this one and put it up on a shelf when they got it back. And then it went in Apollo 13. Well, the engineers always tested out the tanks before they launched, and they did so with this tank as well. The way they did that is to run the fuel cells and then drain them. Well, this tank wouldn't drain. The tank that was on Apollo 13 wouldn't drain. And no one knew why, maybe because it was dropped. They then decided to turn up the heater to make all the liquid oxygen gaseous, so it would vent, which it did. But they ran the heater for about 6 hours at 65 volts of electricity, which fried the heater and made it so it wouldn't respond to the thermostat. NASA didn't know that. At time of launch, they filled up the tanks, they launched, all the tanks were running fine, the fuel cells were running fine, except that what they didn't know is that the number 2 tank, instead of being shut off at 80 degrees when it was supposed to by the thermostat, went all the way up to 900 degrees, melted off all the insulation. And so now it had bare wires. And when Schweikert switched the switch on to stir the tank, there were bare wires exposed to each other, a spark, and that's what exploded the tank. It took out not only the number 2 tank, but also the number 1 tank, and also the fuel cells, and made it so that Apollo 13 needed to use the lunar module as a lifeboat to get back to Earth, which they did successfully. If you're interested in other things in the museum, please come and visit us. It's the San Diego Air and Space Museum.